Okay, so let's probably kick off. We have a lot to cover, so um, being conscious of time, let's start. There will be many requests also to watch it on the video, and the video will be shared after after we conclude it. Here we go. So before let's do some introductions first. My name is Kirill. I'm a CEO at Ostride. My career in IT started 20 years ago, a little bit more than that. I started working in the outsourcing company in Europe, working mostly for telecom providers and other companies in Europe. After that, I have switched roles and I joined an investment bank, built an IT department there, where I was on the other side of this relationship, not being on the vendor side, but we've been hiring vendors, we've been managing vendors, and watching their deliver the software for us. And after that, I have started Ostride, which is a software development vendor focused solely on Australia projects. And I will be covering some of our experience today. Askar, over to you.
Good morning. My name is Askar. I'm a senior engineering manager currently at Forto, focusing on the platform teams. I've been working in this field for the past, I don't know, more than 10 years for sure. Out of them, past 4 years supporting the platform teams strongly, and I will be talking today and sharing my experiences that I have with different cost factors and different team setups that I was able to witness over the past few years.
Thank you. So moving on, before I cover the agenda and explain what we will be talking about in detail, I just wanted to highlight the problem in general. There's this generic value of 100K AUD that many of those who start a product consider that like this is their psychological limit of what should be spent before they generate revenue and before they achieve success or something like that. To be honest, I've never seen a project which had this budget at the start and which was successful. I've seen a project which had 10K at the start. I've seen a project which had 300K at the start. A project which had a seed round already covered, and they had the VC money there. But the 100K is some number which is only exists in ideas, but and it also doesn't go away in one big mistake. So what we will be covering here is how like what mistakes need to be avoided in terms of the scope, in terms of the ownership of the project, in terms of the technical architecture, tools, and change requests and changing directions later on, which would allow not to spend this budget, or not to overspend this budget, or not overspend the budget that you have, because again, the 100K is just a number. And what this webinar is not about, it's not about how you would be able to vibe code your own proof of concept, go with it to the market and not have a technical co-founder or any technical expertise and still succeed. That's not what this is about. And this is more about real experience in the fields, about which projects go well and which projects don't. So what we will cover, and we'll try to fit it into 45 minutes, but we may overrun maybe by 5 minutes or so, judging from how we did it before. One point which I forgot to mention also is that if you would like to be asking questions, there's a Q&A button in Zoom control panel on mobile or on desktop, and you can hit that button and ask your question there, and you will see all other questions there too. This is a more efficient way of submitting questions than using the general chat, because you can also vote for some other question there. And we will cover the Q&A at the end of the session when we are done here. So what we will cover, something that I have already said, then the team structure and how AI can be used in AI-assisted delivery, what can be done well and efficient in architecture and technical debt topic, budget control. Some of you have joining here because of the spreadsheet that we have shared. The spreadsheet is about how to calculate the budget for your launch, which has real numbers, Australian rates for the internal team or for the agency. I'll cover it later. So we will be talking about that. Then we will be talking about delivery control. And finally, we will be talking about, well, we will be covering Q&A, obviously. Moving on. So first of all, your budget for the launch, unless you already know that, it's not just developers' time. That's something that feels natural to think of, but it's not the case. It's really the senior engineering time. You can see that that's something that takes just a fraction of the overall budget. And then, yeah, let me try and maybe make it bigger. I'm being told that I should try and go full screen here. Maybe like that. Yeah. Sorry. Then there is product and design work. There's QA and testing, which are very important. There is DevOps and infrastructure setup. Some you have to deal with the cloud, most likely. AI tooling, very important, and we'll be covering that. Monitoring and support. You don't want to learn about your application not being live from your first clients. Project management and contingency, which is very important, but you don't want to have too much there either. Askar?
Another aspect that I have seen commonly not present in the statement of work or initial budget breakdowns is the work related to the infrastructure. Specifically, continuous integration and continuous deployment and the environment setup can cost you up to $8,000 if you don't think about it early enough. Provisioning and monitoring cost. Nowadays, there's a bunch of products out there competing with each other to provide you best observability on your cloud infrastructure and the way the services are operating, which is also adding up to $6,000. Third-party integrations, depending on the industry that you are working in, you might be willing to have a checkout process or integration with a payment system or validation of the identity of a person. That will also cost you money and probably is not something that you want to develop on your own. Security and audit and penetration testing is a thing that is getting more and more crucial in everyday business for the B2B and the B2C sector, especially in the B2B. From my experience, the partners often want to see the proof that the data of the customers is stored in a proper way, that it's not going to be leaked to the third parties by an accident or anything like that. And a simple pen test, penetration test, will cost you up to $10,000 out of the window, basically right away. QA and stabilization, very important. QA stands here for the quality assurance. Even though that a lot of companies tend to not have dedicated personnel for the quality assurance anymore, it is still a very important step, and somebody will have to take care of that. And the documentation and handover cost is also not obvious, but it tends to accumulate as you proceed through the development phases of your software. Between each iteration, you want to have a clean documentation so that it's easy to maintain the product and not have the investigation rounds by the software engineers, which are costly between each iteration of the development. All of this adds up to $40,000, which is 40% of your budget that we've been looking at in the beginning.
Right. So the question is then, and please don't get us wrong, we're not trying to be over pessimistic here. We just try to make you think in a way that will make you ask the uncomfortable questions first. Maybe it's not 40K for you in addition to the dev time. Maybe it's 20, maybe it's 5. Your case is your case and it's special, but The important thing is that you don't want to be asking the wrong question, such as that can we build something for 100K? The better question is actually what exactly can we build? What would be the trade-offs and what risks are we accepting? Starting something new, starting a product is actually meaning starting a business. And if you start a business, you're taking enormous risks. And whatever risk you can mitigate, whatever risk you can completely push to somebody else, you should definitely do it because you don't know how the things will go. It's always unique and always genuine in every particular case. You just want to be there and go through that process and be successful at the end. Now, a very important, probably one of the most important slides of the whole talk here is the delivery models that we're looking at currently. And it's not rocket science here, but it's important to understand where you are in these boxes, right? So there's a probably the best scenario, which means that you have an in-house tech lead, plus you have a junior or mid developers either in-house or outsourced or offshore or onshore. But the most important point here is that you have a tech lead, a co-founder, or somebody with skin in the game, and that person is in-house. That's the best scenario to have, right? Other scenarios from our perspective are you hire a fractional CTO, that is a chief technical officer, plus you have a lean delivery team. Sometimes CTO brings the team on board, the fractional CTO sometimes have a few teams to choose and bring on. Sometimes you hire a vendor and there's a CTO directly reporting to you, and there's a vendor reporting to CTO, something like that. Good model as well, but with more risk, obviously. All of the model, except the first one, are more risk than the in-house tech lead. The next model is that you hire freelancers and form a team yourself and do the management overhead yourself, or you hire an agency plus a couple of freelancers, different scenarios here. And then finally, you have a scenario of a fully outsourced agency. Most likely this is an agency that you know and you don't just meet on the street. These are people that have been recommended to you with a good track record, with the successful projects, maybe with the customers that they have brought from the early days to seed round to the Series A to the revenue generating profitable business. You want an agency like that. So out of all these cases, and I know that many founders would tell me like, I'm a business founder. Don't tell me that I need in-house tech lead. If I had an in-house tech lead, we wouldn't have this conversation in the first place. Everybody wants that. Well, what are you gonna do? In-house tech lead is the best scenario, there is, right? Because somebody who is sharing risks with you is the best scenario, and then the team who is reporting to them will be the best team.
To that, I actually have a very good example. In my past career, I have witnessed a fintech project which was adopted on the German market, essentially developed by the outsourcing team together with the tech lead in-house. There are a few risks that we didn't really discuss even now in this model, which is the transition of the knowledge. At some point of time after the first iteration of the product was ready, the company which initially ordered the software engineering work, they wanted to adopt and move the ownership and the knowledge of the product code base in-house. And there has been certain amount of struggle. It's always hard for the developers to learn the new code base, take over the ownership. There has been back and forth, and in the end, it actually went back to the maintenance work for the agency model, which is fine, but did not necessarily correspond to the first intent of the company that has ordered the product initially.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Now maybe let's talk a little bit about the AI and where does it actually help. Nowadays, I feel like there is a new AI tool out there coming up every week. A lot of companies are working on the usage of the large language models and their application to the software development and so on and so forth. Obviously, it does have appliance across almost the whole software development lifecycle, if you wish. Starting with the discovery work, which is Miro, for example, has a very good understanding of how to adopt the AI within the discovery process. It can create the wireframes for you. It can assist you with the user flows, documentation, creation of the slide decks, and so on and so forth. The next cornerstone is the specification. So writing down the requirements, translating them into the documents which are easily understood by the software engineers, user stories, creation of the tickets, and so on and so forth. A big Australian company called Jira has a perfect assistance with the AI tooling in their offering. Building the code, obviously, this is the most probably heard use case, right? Claude, OpenAI, Copilot. We have a bunch of products out there which actually assist engineers with the coding. The quality of them changes from month to month. So in my experience, it doesn't really matter which kind of tool you choose. It matters what developers actually prefer to use and they are experts in. So it's important to ask your developers what they feel comfortable with using. Testing, again, the Claude and all of the coding focused products, they can assist you with writing tests, but there are also suits and software out there, vendors who are offering generation of the tests based on the user stories, for example, or the wireframes, visual tests. Even a lot of test automation can be done using AI. Some of the CI/CD vendors are offering the feature of stabilizing the test. If CI/CD shows repeatedly that specific test is failing, they provide a feature which would adjust your code in such a way that the test is not failing anymore and is still useful. And last but not least, documentation and the handover. As we talked before, it is important for developers to understand the code base that they are working in, and sometimes it is getting really hard, or maybe developer has not been working in this particular part of the code for a while, so they tend to forget. There are products such as CodeRabbit, for example, which are capable of generating the diagrams that describe what good code does, linking the context out of the third-party tools such as Jira and Confluence and so on and so forth. Yeah. So as we can see, there is AI tool for almost everything, but it's important not to forget that the AI tools, they don't really understand your business model. They don't really understand what kind of concepts would you like to apply to the code base that you are aiming at having and maintaining. So it is important not to let it flow on its own, more or less, but always have a supervision from the expert within your team or the expert within the partner team.
Yeah. So, and again, why we are talking this much about AI is that, well, there's a lot of hype about AI these days. And well, the reason is that behind the hype is that there is actually a huge value of what's going on. And the value is that if you really know what you're doing, right? If you're able to do it all yourself, but you're willing to delegate some of it to AI, it's like you have wings, right? You're going so much faster. You will complete a 3 days engineering work in a few hours just because you know how to set the task for the AI, right? And then you will be dealing only with the really important stuff, but all the tedious code writing will be delegated. So it's the AI controlled AI delivery really brings it to the next level. It's very important. It's changing the pace of the software development dramatically these days. But we don't want to fall into the faster chaos, right? Where you don't understand what you're doing and you just hope that AI will understand it instead of you. That's not going to work. And AI is not, it doesn't have a personality really. It doesn't care. It doesn't have emotions. It doesn't worry, and all of that will not get you far. And now oh, sorry, Askar, that's over to you.
Thanks. There is also a question about this in our Q&A section. Essentially, how do you basically verify if the team tells you that it's going to utilize AI, and that's what leads to the reduction of the budget required for the specific development phase, right? I think it's a good idea to ask a few simple questions, starting with how do you use AI in general in planning and documentation? It is always good to read the document, which is at least proofread by a human and is not completely generated by AI, right? There's a few hints on recognizing if the text has been written by AI starting with the simple things. A lot of humans don't really use bold and italics when they write emails or documents. So if you see bold and italics, this is probably AI generated text that you are looking at, right? There are ways, right? You can look it up on the internet. Then it's always a good question to ask, do you use the AI tools for the code generation? How exactly the code is verified by the people, essentially? How is it being reviewed? Do you have senior engineers who are forced to review the code? The opposite of that would be the extensive usage of the AI tools, which also allows to pass the code review process. Again, products like CodeRabbit automate this. It's also a good question to ask if the AI code is tested. Some of the early adopters of the AI tools claim that software engineering job is essentially moving from the field of writing the code to the field of writing the tests. Again, it has a good synergy with the test-driven development methodology and so on and so forth. So the idea is not new. Also, not a lot of people actually practice it, I think, but still it is possible to write the test, to have the test written by the software engineers and the code generated by AI. Then very important question is, how do you protect the sensitive data? How do you make sure that AI tools do not have access to, let's say, customer data? Which is very especially important if you work in the healthcare or the financial sector, for example. And last but not least, again, the handover. How do you use the tools for the handover? In each of these points, what you want to hear is a good story. You want to have very specific examples of how the tools have been used, maybe a little demo. This never hurts.
Yeah. Yeah, the next topic that we wanted to cover from the architecture and technical debt is the technical debt itself. And you may have heard about the term of the technical debt. It's a very important one because it always exists. You can't not have the technical debt, really. When you start, you already generate some, and it usually can be identified by the decisions like we will fix it later, or let's hard code it for now. And these decisions might be right and valid decisions for this point. You just need to understand like the what you're doing really, right? And what kind of risk you might be creating. And it's important to make these decisions consciously, right? And not just cut all the corners without thinking like what's better, to cut this corner or not to have this feature at all. Important question also to ask. So some other questions are like, we will make the environment production ready later. Then what you do is that you launch your first version and suddenly you realize you don't have any place to test new features because there's production with the users and you can't test anything there, surprisingly. And it catches up with you, right? We will add monitoring after the launch. Again, not the best idea, because the client will tell you some, or the user will tell you something like, yeah, it's just not working for me. It just doesn't. I don't have time now to explain. I did something and I got a white screen, and there we go. If you don't have monitoring, if you don't have tools which would actually tell you what user did, you will not be able to fix an issue like that. Then the security, Askar already mentioned that you don't want to compromise security at all, because if I mean, especially for the company in the early days, if you have a leak of the private data of your users or your clients, you're basically done, right? A big company will probably manage and survive. The small company, it's the end of it, and it will be also huge damage to your reputation as the founder too. Documentation can wait. Well, yeah, it happens all the time, and again, maybe that's okay. Maybe you can generate it from the AI tools or something, but you need to understand what exactly you giving away for moving faster.
Now let's talk about budget leaks, which is a fun topic, right? As we mentioned, there's a lot of tools and supporting infrastructure that you can be using to develop your product nowadays. It starts with the cloud, right? Nobody nowadays provisions the servers, nobody buys the server racks, more or less. Everybody is just going to AWS or GCP or Microsoft or whatever the hosting provider of the choice is, and asks for the cloud infrastructure. One of the common mistakes there is that it gets over provisioned and oversized. As Kirill mentioned, it's very important not to have only one environment, which is production environment, but also have separate environments for testing and feature development. And if the infrastructure for that is not provisioned properly, it would add up easily to the cost and can cost you more than $5,000 a month, essentially, which is a significant cost out of your initial budget. Tools and subscriptions, AI coding tools, again, it's important to understand the pricing model there. Some of them are offering seed-based pricing, some of them are based on the token usage. What you want to be looking at is the usage and see if the models are used, at least used all the time by people essentially, or not used so frequently. And then essentially a lot of them offer the quality and the acceptance of the prompts statistics, which is also a helpful metric to look at. LLM usage, if your product is based on the AI and offers the customer features which are around the LLM, you can also easily get out of control on the cost of the LLM, especially right now that the vendors, big vendors, are adjusting their pricing models repeatedly, essentially, and latest models are getting more and more expensive and costly. There are tricks around that. There are also small language models which you can provision on your own infrastructure, which is reducing the cost rapidly. Scope creep and the rework from the unclear decisions is by far the most expensive part of your cooperation with a vendor. If you do not define very well in the beginning what you want to be built, when you approach your partner and tell them, oh, can we add a feature ABC to the code? For example, we didn't think about the permissions or login and user management. It will probably trigger a long discussion about what are exactly the requirements, how big the system should be, and it's also getting more and more expensive, obviously, as you progress with the amount of code within your code base.
Yeah. So if you basically add up our every other expense that we mentioned and put it on top of the of the hypothetical 100K, you will find out that it's basically almost doubles the size if it's not managed properly. Again, I mentioned it already. It doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be a 82K on top of that, right? It's about making a good plan, understanding your risks, and considering your budget as the whole, where the probably the development and launch should take maybe 60% of the overall budget that you plan to have spent until you generate revenue or until you get to the next big milestones of maybe another capital call or a VC round, right? So depending on whether you're a VC backed or a bootstrapped company. So it's just important to cover these topics. It's important to look at that. It's very important to ask these uncomfortable questions, at least at the beginning, so that when you later are in the joy of building something and seeing how it just becomes alive, it just appears out of nothing, you would still have a plan for when things might go wrong. One of the saddest example which are there where people are thinking just about the product and building a product and not about the business that will be using that product, that you launch a product and you have 20 users or maybe 10 users out of family and friends. And then you launch maybe a marketing campaign with ads and all of that, and you get another 100 or maybe 10 or maybe, I don't know, 200 or maybe even 1,000, but that's it. They never go back. You don't know why they don't return. All of that is a very important and tricky thing to tackle through partners, through long-term strategy, and it goes way beyond just building a product. So think about it and have a plan for that. Have a plan for unfortunate outcomes.
And as we can see, our numbers keep increasing, right? So in the beginning, we were talking about 40% on top of your 100K budget. Now we are talking about more or less 80% of the realistic cost on top of your budget, right? Let's talk a little bit about how to avoid this. Constantly raising cost, essentially. And there is a question on Q&A section, which we probably would also benefit from the same methodology, how to identify which agency to go with if you ever need to make a choice between two, right? Essentially, what you want to have is a discipline. You want to have discipline practically on the cloud side, and you want to definitely have the discipline on the AI tooling usage side, right? What does it mean within the cloud usage discipline, right? Oversized environments. Very simple. If you have large machines running the code, which is only using a few 100 MB of your RAM or one or two CPU, and maybe these machines are running 24/7 instead of being shut down for the night where you don't have any active users, this will cost you. Also, one of the very easy optimizations is essentially if your engineers try to be overly careful and suggest that the infrastructure is provisioned across multiple availability zones, you want to make sure that these availability zones essentially are not turned on too quickly on one side. On the other side, you want to make sure that the services which are deployed, they are communicating with each other within one zone so that you avoid the cost of the network traffic just because of the fact that you are using different availability zone of the same cloud provider. Not mentioning the fact that some availability zones are just more pricey as a baseline cost compared to the others. Duplicated services. A lot of the observability products such as Datadog, by the way, would offer you features which monitor how well your services are sized. Are they using all of the memory that you have allocated to them? Are they using all of the CPUs that you have allocated to them? Are the nodes essentially underlying infrastructure is sized properly? And they would provide also recommendations based on your usage, how well it should be sized. I think Kirill even had an in-house product offering at some point of time developed and provided to his customers, which also did similar recommendations. It's definitely one of the big cost factors where you can play around with.
It's not really a product. It's just something that customers benefit from, that we have this IP that we hand over to customers, and it just gets deployed on whatever cloud they use, and it saves them a few weeks of work just because we know it's going to go that way, right? And it's just expediting things.
Yeah, important thing not to forget here, the cloud and infrastructure cost is a running cost, right? This is not something that you can get rid of easily if you accumulate, if you build it up. It's getting harder and harder to negotiate cutting that down because cutting down the infrastructure cost means essentially reducing the uptime of your services, which is a very hard negotiation to have with the engineers. You have to do it carefully. Um, AI and tooling discipline. As we talked before, all of the AI tools are very nice. It's very exciting to work with them. Engineers in particular are very keen. It helps saving time, but you want to see two things essentially. One, you want to see that there is a constant usage, and second, you want to see that the usage of these tools essentially is done properly. If the prompts that are being submitted to the tools are not really accepted by the tools, you don't want to spend time on it. The same applies to the code review process. What I observed within the teams that I worked with, the code review, AI assisted code review is just turned on by default on a lot of pull requests. And then developers look at them for a few weeks, and at some point of time, the recommendations start being ignored or being omitted because they need to release something faster to production, and so on and so forth. You either want to avoid this by disabling tools, or you want to sit down and have a champions within your team who actually make sure that other developers are familiar with how to use these tools properly and have enough time to address all of the recommendations, essentially, right? Privacy and security, guardrails, all of the AI tools need to have restrictions. For example, restricted access to the databases where the customer data is stored, restricted access to the administrative features of your cloud environment, and so on and so forth. So these are the good points to look at and stay disciplined in.
Yeah, I remember just going back to the topic of the cloud invoice. I remember there was a time when a client came to us and their cloud invoice was just over 100K because they had a lot of usage with the big companies and all that. And looking at the database usage and the way that API and the database were together, we were basically able to decrease this cost 10 times. So the next invoice that they had after we did some optimization on the infrastructure level was less than 10K, I think, for the same level of usage. So that's how important it is, and how probably more important it is than than the planning for the development team solely. Yeah, the scope creep versus pivot, how to decide. There's no easy answer to that. I would say that the question that should be asked here is that when you add a feature or when you decide that you really, really need something and you're willing to, just increase the budget or push the timeline further for the launch, is this really worth it? And are you 100% sure that this will be the game changer? And if it's not, if you're asking if it's about some dashboard or AI suggestions or maybe some admin, don't do any admin automations at the start, please. You don't know even like what users will like or don't like about your app and how they will be using it. All admin activities at the start have to stay manually, and engineers should be focused on the client-facing parts. Can we add mobile? Again, maybe yes, maybe no, depending on how your audience consume the content and the features that you offer. The questions are about what's your competitive edge. If it's not part of your competitive edge, don't add it. Just get to the users as fast as possible, find out whether they like the app or not. And obviously you need to have a plan for something that will really, really change the way they do things in a particular area. Then they will tell you themselves what else they want on the app. or the the web service. Yeah.
Talking about the scope creep and the feature development, right? It's important to understand what is the role of the founder, right? In a situation where something goes wrong, it's important not to freak out. It's important to have two things in mind. One of them is decisions that you have to make the upfront, essentially. You want to be bringing the clarity to the team that you are working with. You want to be controlling what is within the scope and what's without the scope, what has to be built custom made for you, and what you can buy. These do make or buy decisions, essentially. Um, you want to be tracking what kind of decisions you make and what kind of impact they will have. This is especially important as you go through the process of negotiating added work, because it means that some features might be not delivered. You want to have a very clear understanding in terms of what would it mean for your total product development. It's a good idea to keep the risk register and kind of on a weekly basis check what kind of risks do you have, what kind of risks have you mitigated, and what is there still to do. Yeah, and the trade-off.
And then from the contra side, but I mean, I just wanted to, sorry to interrupt, Askar. I just wanted to also to emphasize on the risk register. There are three types of teams, I would say, talking in the matter of the risk register. One team just doesn't care about it and never wants to do it or never wants to ask these questions and all of that. Another team, they have a manager who does the risk register once at the start, and they basically document it. Then they probably go to all the stakeholders, to the team, to everybody, and they say like, look at the risks that we might face here. Let's discuss what we are going to do about it. They do this exercise once at the start and never ever go back to this exercise again. Well, it's better than not doing it at all, but it's better maybe by 10%. And then what Askar mentioned is that you really want to do it regularly because risks change and the environments change, and you have to review it again. You have to be disciplined. You have to consider and you have to look at the big picture instead of asking questions like, is the product 50% done or 55% done? Please don't do that. And again, from the discipline perspective, what you want to control, what is being built, why does it really matter? Honestly, looking at the feature, why does it matter really? Do you want it there? Maybe not. Maybe let's just assume that the prep work for this feature was done in vain, but not implemented. Make a grown-up decision and just write it off, right? Scope. These are usual suspects. I don't want to go over all of that. It's just that on a weekly basis, be disciplined. Don't relax after things start going well for a week or two. Be vigilant about what may go wrong. Boring, but works. And then the red flags that you may want to spot early is that if the dev team tells you that everything is on track, but for a very respectful reason, they can't show you a demo or a working build. Just maybe in a few hours, or maybe on Monday. That's not a good sign. Just not a good sign. Not seeing a working product every week, I would say, a working increment on the product. Then if the team cannot explain architecture decisions in simple language, they should be able to understand it so well that they should be able to explain it to somebody who whose PhD is in, I don't know, English literature. They still should be able to explain it to these people, right? and make sense. Then the change requests coming at the double the cost, right? I don't know, you build the first version in 3 months, and then you request a change to this version, and suddenly this changes another month, like 30% of the initial run. This may have to do with the technical debt that I mentioned previously, but nevertheless, it must not be like that. There is a reason why it is so. And if there are team changes, somebody left, somebody joined, and there's no handover or documentation, it's not good. Of course, you can use AI to basically get you up to speed in a couple of conversations, but first of all, try to retain the team, right? And find out why people are leaving. And secondly, if there is a reason, and I don't know, whatever that is, there must be some procedure for this. And then the process is finally that we recommend to do that: protect the budget and keep it under your number that you decided to be reasonable. Is that there should be a weekly sync, 30 minutes at least, right? It may not necessarily be even, a video call. It could be a text sync if it works, right? But again, I would strongly recommend looking at the product every week. Then demo every 2 weeks is actually a little bit relaxing. You may want to see any changes, even raw changes every week. 2 weeks is the absolute minimum, so that if you don't have an update on the product every 2 weeks, something is wrong with the process. It should be faster. Definitely should be faster these days. Scope documents. So you need to capture what you have started with, because you will be changing that. And then the next one is again reasonable, that there will be a decision log. At least have it in emails. Don't have it only in some made on calls and never captured. Have a message. Have an email. You will thank yourself later about it. Change request process. Again, be disciplined about it. Don't just throw things into the scope without asking yourself reasonable questions. Risk register was mentioned already. And then have an owner for product and architecture, infrastructure, quality, and launch for everything. It may be the same person for several areas, which are overlapping. But there must be a person who will not tell you that it wasn't them who should be in charge of that, right? Somebody should not be able to tell you that. And again, we have covered a bunch of things here, which should help you right there from our perspective. Just give it some thought. We also run, obviously, the workshop, which we covered many times on our page, which is the 1 week architecture and UX workshop, where we identify these issues, we document our recommendations. You can take it away to your team, or you can capture it for whenever you will be launching the product, actually, and you will be in the mode of getting on. We provide all artifacts in writing, and we provide all the recommendations of how you can get from the idea or the business concept that you have to a product which will actually be implementing it in the best way, and what you want to pay attention to depending on your area. We have seen the products from various areas. We have seen failing products. We have seen successful products. So we can tell you what you may want to be doing, whom you may want to have on the team to get there. And then finally, the recap. I don't want to cover all of that. You can see it here. Choose your model and use AI smartly. And let's probably move on to the Q&A, sorry, and see what questions we have here. 1 second, I'll find where it is. Probably it's because of my full screen. Yeah, here we go. So the first question that was asked is that we've had a local agency quote around 160K and an offshore team quote less than half that. On paper, the scope looks fairly similar. What should we be comparing from the headline price? So first of all, from my experience, I think that's too much for the initial budget, 160K. That's too much. You may want to spend less than that. In terms of the local agency and the offshore team quote, the gap might be there, But I would say that the important thing here is to understand the track record of the agency, right? To understand what they put into this number. We have covered some of the questions, by the way, that should be asked to the development team about that, and understand that. From our experience, the local agency, well, it's just it might be like almost half of it can be just taxes, right? So it's really difficult for a local agency to be profitable in Australia these days. But it doesn't mean that offshore would be doing that well. You need to dig into the details, and my recommendation is probably to get a third quote. That's what I would do, right? When I was on the buying side, I rarely was choosing from two vendors. Yes, it's more homework, but you may want to have to be choosing from three participants. And finally, one more thing that I wanted to cover here is that, and it's very important, that if you're hiring an agency, your project and you as a customer, you need to make sure that you mean a lot for this vendor. Meaning that if you go now as a small company, as the startup business, if you go now and try to hire, to buy services, let's say from first of all, you will never hear back from them. And then you will get a huge quote, and then if I'm exaggerating here, but let's say somehow they have agreed to build it for you, they just couldn't care less, right? They don't care if you succeed or if you lose, right? You don't care for the outcome. They don't care for the outcome at all. You want to choose a vendor more or less of your size or of the size for which you as a customer is extremely important, so that the people on the vendor side lose sleep at night because they need to build it for you. That's the vendor that you need. You definitely don't need the vendor who will be just sending you invoices and showing you to some spreadsheet there, showing like, we don't know, it was your decision to do this or that. We have captured it here and you have accepted it when you have paid. It's just, it will not get you far. And our experience is that you get more of that with the local agencies, by the way, than with the offshore. I don't know why, but that's just our experience. Okay, I hope I have answered this one. Next one, our development partner says using AI will cut the build time by roughly 30%. What would you ask them to show before trusting this estimate? Askar, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think we covered this. Essentially, what you want for your partner to demonstrate is the presence of the experts within the staff that will make sure that the tools are used in a way that actually provides the return on the save time, and not just save time by generating more code or whatever that has to be also maintained with an extra price, with an extra cost later on. Yeah, I would just stick to that. Make sure that the answers, that there is a staff essentially, and the questions that you might ask about how the AI tools are used that we talked about always are accompanied with the fact that there is a senior staff which is making sure that the tools are used properly.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. And then I agree with that. Now, the next question here is that is a fixed price contract actually safer for building an MVP, or does it usually just mean that you'll be charged extra for every change later? Very good question. So our experience is that it depends on the model. Remember, I have covered 4 models. Like you have a tech co-founder, or you hire an agency, or a team of freelancers, and so on. So it depends on that, right? If you go with the agency and you don't have a tech co-founder, I strongly recommend you to go fixed price. The reason is that this is another reason for the agency to have some skin in the game. Yes, they will factor in some risk into the fixed price cost of the initial build. You will be able to switch the model to the hourly later after the launch. if you decide that this will be better. And by the way, if you don't have a technical co-founder or somebody on the team, you definitely want to have one by the time of the launch. The person who will be managing the engineers on the hourly rates from the offshore, that's the most cost-efficient setup, right? And you will have time to find a co-founder while you're building the MVP and you're validating your product market fit. Right, but in terms of just hiring in the agency, yes, you go in with the agency which probably has been referred to you, or you decided that this is the one, right? Go fixed price. Insist on fixed price. This will be safer for you because the vendor will have to be vigilant about the costs. They will know that by the contract you will not pay them more. And yeah, you will have to have some conversations about the change requests, but these are healthy conversations. You want to have them anyway, even if it's time and material, you still want to have these conversations. Now, if you have a technical co-founder, I would actually recommend going with the agency on the hourly model, not doing fixed price with them. The technical person from in-house should manage the people. And it will be more cost efficient without an agency factoring in the risk, because there is no risk for them. You just need the people. Technical co-founder decides these are good enough people, and you manage the scope, and people are doing a good work. And with the small team, it's very easy to spot if somebody is not giving their best. Everybody should be in the spotlight all the time, every day. My recommendation, for example, is for the early days is that everybody, every day, you don't want to have like daily meetings probably, but you definitely want to have everybody from the team drop 2 sentences into the channel saying what you've been up to today. I mean, this disciplines a lot. You will get a lot out of it. So again, the answer is like, depending on which model you have, do you have a technical co-founder or not? If you have a technical co-founder, the best project we've seen, they went hourly time and material from day one. If you don't have a technical co-founder, go fixed price for the initial launch. And the final question, if we already have designs and a fairly detailed feature list, is discovery phase still worth paying for before development starts? Oh, yes. Definitely. We like to call it architecture and UX, actually, and not just discovery, because it sounds a little bit weird that somebody is discovering the product for you. It's, I don't understand why this word sticks. But the bottom line is definitely yes, because this phase will get you the architecture. This phase will get you the workflows. This phase will get you the risks that you might be facing, some indicative timelines, and many other things that you can just take away and launch the product months later, right? But you will still have it, right? And it will make you think big time, because you will be talking to somebody who did it a number of times with different clients, and they've seen mistakes, and they will share it with you. So why not? And I think that's it. I think we have answered all the questions, unless somebody else submits anything. Surprisingly, we're on time. Not bad. We will be sharing the recording and some other details. If you don't have the budget spreadsheet from us, which will help you calculate your budget depending on your model and the rates, Australian or the offshore or other, or freelancers, let us know. We'll share the spreadsheet. You can also get it from the webinar.ostridelabs.com. I would like also to thank Askar for supporting us here. And yeah, have a good evening.
Thank you for joining, and thank you for having me here.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.